So I just had such an incredible experience in yoga today, and it all really began because the instructor who I was working with today had an approach that was very different than I think how I would typically approach the practice of yoga. And I was able to connect with her following the class about some of these experiences and really kind of work through some of the questions that I had in my mind about what the meaning of this is, or how this really translates to provide the insight that we gather through these experiences. And one thing that I've noticed is that coming out of Shavasana is a challenge. And I don't easily just hop up and transition from the state of Shavasana to typical baseline functional activity level of awareness and incorporation and overall energetic intensity. And it got me to really thinking about how often I struggle to come down from the highs of riding upon this energy and how I perceive it and what it means. And I know myself enough to understand at this point that everything that was labeled as anxiety, bipolar disorder, PTSD symptoms, like all of these, they have this kind of overlap in these intense emotional frequencies that we can find ourselves embodying at any point in time. And the ways that the mind, body, spirit triad are really all one and the same. It's all connected, and they're just different branches of the same. Because really, those are kind of like the baseline understandings to like bring it to this level where it's like, okay, so I can activate my physical responses through my own mind, and vice versa. I can activate my ways of reasoning or making sense of what's happening depending on my physical state. The emotional frequency that I am embodying at any given moment in time has had such an impact on the way that I'm able to perceive the meaning in everyday encounters, or even other physical sensations of myself or anything, what I'm capable of, the beliefs that ring true in those moments. And one of the greatest things that I've really struggled with is being able to find a cohesion across these emotional, different varying frequencies and states of being and states of embodiment, because a lot of times the best reasoning I can come up with in those times is that, oh, you just must not, it feels like a disconnection, or it feels like some sort of confusion, which is definitely a vulnerable state for me. But rather than just immediately jumping into the shame and jumping into these ideas that, oh, you see, you're actually a failure and you're actually a fraud and all of these things, those are the harmful thoughts and things that I've told myself in the past quite often, and still can find myself dipping into that way of thinking. But the difference now is that I can understand how our thoughts are not actually a conclusion upon ourselves, and we don't have to perceive it that way. Because the more that we are able to question the thought itself, the more that we can potentially come up with some other explanations, and that can actually help us to expand on our own understanding and make space even for the discomfort of some of these states of being or thoughts that might be running through in mind in a more cognitive form. And the thing about our being and our experience is that it is such an enormous collaboration, and we can definitely focus into different specific areas, like if I only want to really intellectualize and overanalyze and go down that rabbit hole, Lord knows I've been there. I used to perceive high energy as good and low energy as bad, hence this whole idea about bipolar disorder, being that the sociable, excitable, energetic mania seemed to be a more pleasant state of being, based on the responses of others around me and the way that it felt to be in that place, than the low, depressive, exhausted, fatigued, unproductive version of myself on the other end of that spectrum. And I used to perceive this as bad. And so I'm in Shavasana and I notice, this is a very calm, deep state of being. The energy level itself is extremely, it's just, I don't want to say low because of the association low and bad, but it is a state of deep meditative relaxation. It could appear as though this is depression. Your body might be trying to trick your mind into believing that, just based on the body conscious. And something about the body's conscious versus our cognitive consciousness is a key piece in all of this. And when we're looking to bridge the gaps between the head and heart, when we're looking to feel more present in our lives, this is huge. If for whatever reason, whatever explanation the doctors may have given you, or even if this is not a diagnosed thing, even if it's just something that you've noticed about how you're feeling, if it's a question of what's right and what's good or what's bad, or we need to kind of let go of that language, just because associating the low with bad gave shame right back to me for being bad, being in the wrong kind of way that was not preferred, or it was causing harm, or and a lot of times it would cause harm, or harm would come as a consequence of remaining embodied within that frequency for too long. But what I realized is it wasn't the state of being itself that did that. It was the response to the state of being and the reasoning of what it meant, and then the response to that in the form of a behavior or action that would cause harm, like self-harm. But a lot of it came because of the way that I understood what it meant. These are hardwired, it is a lot of wiring, but it's also a lot of us doing the software and the programming. And we also have the ability, thanks to neuroplasticity, to reroute those hardwires too. So none of this is impossible. When I was first diagnosed with anything, I was young, and I had, I was just in my early teens, and I had experienced extensive trauma leading up to that in my childhood for various things, but never truly addressed it at all. And I don't think that the people who I think that the example that I had to work from, this at that time, a lot was still not very well understood about self-mutilation, self-harm. Mental health was becoming more of a topic of discussion, but there was still such an incredible stigma surrounding it and any sort of treatment for it and all these things. So being hospitalized early in my life like that, receiving a diagnosis of bipolar disorder, what the psychiatrist explained to me is what to expect. I was asking questions like, well, what is the cure? How do I fix this? I don't like what's happening to me. I don't like how I'm feeling. This isn't good for me. It hurts me. I don't want to be me. That was my conclusion, is that this equals me. And it took a very long time to begin to learn how to separate the me who I feel is my soulful self, my most true core version of self, and all of these other added extras that might be a byproduct of self, and plus environment, plus many other things, plus the X factors, plus whatever. I can't even begin to list all of the things that influence us, or that kind of help to guide what path we're on, or what sense we're able to make of things. Every single experience in our lives offers us information if we are capable to receive. Being open, taking the approach of curiosity rather than running into it with this goal to totally change who you are because you hate yourself, or feeling like there's something wrong with you at all that you need to fix. Those approaches to this are I'm not going to say that it won't open the door. It could be a shove to kind of get in there, but then what I would hope is that we are able not to seek out reasons that support those ways of thinking, but I would hope that in the soul searching and in the inner work, that we're able to discover more about ourselves and move quickly beyond the judgment and the shame. Even if it's not quick, it is worth everything to get beyond that. If it takes years and years and the pace is a lot slower than you expected, as long as you're still working towards it, as long as you're still putting your efforts in the places that are intended to nurture and help us, it will have that positive impact in the greater picture and in the greater trajectory of our lives and the outcomes that we are able to come to. And diagnosis of any mental health. So I'm in the office and the psychiatrist is mapping out what this looks like for people, explaining that there's no cure and that people who have this disorder, this is what happens with them. And explaining to me, typically it may result in further hospitalization. Typically it's a degenerative disease that slowly will get worse and worse and worse as you get older, but that it can be managed with medications, and symptoms can be managed, but you can never cure. Okay, so I had this map of these extremes in mind. I swear, I wonder how many different versions that a life would look like had that moment gone differently. I believe in the multiverse. I believe in the different potentials of parallel universes and things like that. So I do envision the me that maybe did not receive that early on when I was my studies in psychology have taught me a lot of really valuable things. And part of the reason why I'm doing this, why I'm expressing this at all, is certainly not to negate or disrespect or discredit the field of psychology, the field of psychopharmacology, psychiatry, neuropsychology, all of it. There is such an important reason why we have so many lenses and fields of study and ways of thinking about things and ways of translating the meaning. And back to this idea of speaking different languages, it's an easy way to think about how there is more to it than the word itself, the label itself, the definition that we hold. And when the different factors that can influence how we understand these things can also include a lot to do with our culture and what is supported socially, and just so much. Plane going by. So it's kind of crazy to me, because it's like I want to just share everything. I want to be able to share the wisdom that I've gathered through these lessons over the course of time, because I truly believe that this could change the way that we think about everything. But everybody thinks about things differently anyways. So introducing many, many languages, many, many lenses, fields of studies, and etc. Because to simplify everything into one might seem simple, but it's going to challenge everything that anybody has learned thus far, you know. So to be able to actually, I'm not saying that's impossible, because actually I'm learning that things come full circle. And that's kind of the point of what I'm trying to say too, is like, whether we're looking at this through the field of psychology or metaphysics or math, like different maths, or different fields of science, or this or that, we're going to find that many, many different words are actually expressing similar meanings, just with different use of different choices of language, and different ways of expressing and describing it. And this is kind of the way that I view various religious beliefs and science, how that seems to be a this versus that thing. Why though? It's really, truly, it's like, I'm going to have to make a separate other segment on this altogether. But one important thing that I just want to say is that division will weaken the whole. And a good leader is going to be able to bring people together as a whole. A good leader will not work to divide the people, because if we consider the lessons of history, which we really should not forget, the fall of the Roman Empire, for example, everything dividing within is going to weaken the whole, and we are not going to have the kind of success that we would see if we were able to connect in a way that would allow for equal respect for all people and truly inclusive of people. And this is why politics bothers me. This is why the approach that many people take in anything is really difficult to understand. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing too, because I believe that the answers to some of these questions, they're not impossible questions. Nothing's impossible. Understanding what is influencing us and learning to seek the kind of pieces to add in for ourselves that can either challenge the harmful, the harm promoting mechanisms, I guess, of thought, of actions, of people, of relationships, witnessing things happening and speaking on them, speaking our truth, standing by that, working into the vulnerable places. Because if there's, for some reason, something that you can't seem to figure out, or why you're responding in a certain way, or if you're having regrets about how you responded, in hindsight even, I mean, that could have been enough to be the lesson, to change the perspective, to offer you the chance to question. It is a gift to be able to realize and recognize it for what it is. The challenges will be an ongoing natural feature in the course of life. It's going to happen. It's going to happen again and again. Because with every new experience offering us more information to learn and grow, we're often outgrowing the kind of like things that may not align. And that's okay. It's going to happen. So this is what I'm learning, is that rather than freaking out when it feels like my whole life is falling apart. Okay, the meaning behind this. What does it mean? Does it mean that I'm a failure? No. If I'm struggling to get out of Shavasana and stand and get back up into a seated position and then slowly, ease into the baseline and carry on with my day. Why is my body wanting to remain here? My mind is telling me to go, but it's not easy. I'm looking around the room and I see other people getting up. They're already putting their mats away and I'm still laying here. Uh-oh, that must mean X, Y, and Z, right? No. Give yourself the grace. Give yourself a little bit of gentleness, because we are so hard on ourselves. We are already torturing ourselves with a million things, okay? If we can understand how much this is actually going to hinder us in the end, not necessarily as a motivator to just do better, but understanding if there's a struggle there, what does this mean? Dive deeper. Figure out what's happening with you. You don't need to be kicked when you're down. If you're already having the confusion in the first place, that's already vulnerable. So the more we keep continuing to tell ourselves, oh, this must mean that you suck. This must mean that you're going to fail, or that you've already failed. This must mean that they don't like you. This must mean that whatever. Come on. Every idea you feed your own brain and every action that you go through with your own body, everything leads to everything. It's going to be this huge, ongoing cause and effect at any given point. It's never too late. It's never too early. It's all wherever you're finding yourself here today. So what we can do if we're questioning is just to give some space. You don't need to conclude yet. It's not time for the conclusion yet. You're still here. We're still alive. We still got a lot of work to do here. It's not over yet. So hold back on the whole I'm a failure thing. Nope. Because telling yourself you're a failure will trick yourself into believing you are done. You're going to close the book, close the openness, close everything. And what comes then as a result of the decision to close is a lack of growth, lack of the success in the ways that you were seeking, and you'll use it as, verifiable evidence that, see, I was right, I failed, and blah, blah, blah. And then we're just holding this within ourselves for however, eternity even. But that's where this work comes in that's really important. And it's going to be hard to challenge the instinct. And it's going to be hard to recognize it, actually, because it's going to feel like your intuition, or it could resemble, the wisdom of other things that you have learned. And you may feel very confident in this definition of self and of what it means. Leaving space, a little extra wiggle room, and just asking yourself what else, or allowing more time to sit with it, because if we brush it aside or push it down or shove it away or hide it in shame and just pretend nothing's wrong, if it's getting to you, it is real and it is deserving of your attention. And it is deserving of love, and it is deserving of whatever it takes. There's a reason this is happening. To ignore it doesn't solve the problem. And pretending everything's fine will create a lot more problems that will just continuously build on this in that realm of, in that way of thinking. That you can't be truthful, that you can't be you, that something's wrong with you. Think of all of the hurtful ways that we are basically torturing ourselves. If your thoughts are falling into that category of ways of thinking, okay, so sometimes it's hard to get out of ways of thinking too. I've had a lot of intrusive thinking. I've had fixations, and I've had rumination on certain things due to other factors like segments of depression in my life, or that low fatigue, low energy, complete depletion, exhaustion thing. It led into other health issues that complicated everything. There were the evidence was all around me because my house was a mess and my relationships were falling apart and I had lost my job and whatever. So many things. But what it really came down to was not that I fail, because here I am to live another day to understand that the way that I was operating in those times was not effective, and suppressing those emotions only made them bite back 10 times harder. So I was kind of like in a position where if I don't figure out a better way to manage myself, I will not be able to function in this world. And with the suicidality and the way that the rumination became about death, I was scared, and I knew that if I didn't do something, that this wasn't going to end well for me. But I realized how important it was to keep some sense of hope. So even today, like in Shavasana, it's like I'm laying there and I'm just wondering, like, I start to get this thought, like, why is this hard? What's wrong with me? Why is everybody else fine to just get up and I'm like literally having trouble to even move? Like they say to just begin, wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, like slowly ease into it. But those thoughts pushed me. It wasn't ease, it was harsh. And I think that what that reveals to me is that I need to allow myself whatever amount of time it does take to naturally flow into the next phase. And after living the majority of my life in a place of chronic stress, my body was very much used to operating in the extremes. And the whole crashing and burning thing because of self-neglect, the physical needs were not being met. And I was way detached from my physical. So getting more in tune with my physical self and understanding my energy, having the connection and groundedness and presence, not just in the world and in the moment and with people, but with yourself, with the greater incorporation of everything. We can begin to differentiate ourselves between from other people. I used to get bullied a lot in school, for example. And when I was young, if somebody were to tell me something like I'm ugly or I'm fat or a loser or whatever, such harmful things, such a young, vulnerable person who was already struggling with their self-esteem and trauma history and everything. When I think back, I forgive them. I forgive the bullies. I understand they themselves did not have the understanding or wisdom to know what I'm saying to you now, and neither did I. We all did the best we could. There were periods of time where I went through a lot of isolation, and it was so heavily infused with a lot of harmful self-talk about why I was in that position. I couldn't make sense of it, and the doctors continuously tried to tell me over and over and over again. And I believed them because I had no solid ground to stand on for myself. I couldn't trust my own perception. Things got really distorted in my ways of thinking, and what I was believing as a result of all of this was not in line with the typical ideas about reality that people follow. So it could seem like psychosis. This level of detachment, dissociation, trauma responses, anybody with BPD or relational struggles. Because really it comes back here to our cores. We cannot control or decide for anyone else. The best thing we can do is to follow our truth and honor ourselves and honor our body's needs, and to speak freely and openly and honestly from the heart. There's so much more to this, but I'm getting to a really long video again. So to finish the story about the Shavasana, and I know I tend to jump around quite a bit, but these are some of the things I'm working on. And so I ease up out of Shavasana. I'm having all these thoughts. I'm trying to figure things out. And just sit with it, and just realize, like, I'm coming into myself. I'm not lost forever in the abyss of the beyond, the great, like, place beyond this physical reality. I seem to, like, in a deeper state of meditation, I believe, where my awareness can extend to. It's difficult to describe. It's not a tangible thing I can just define, but I was feeling into the reaches, into the past and into the future, and just a lot of deep diving into what it all means. And I had a moment where I was critical of myself. I brought awareness to the critical self, and then I questioned that too. I'm like, well, why? Maybe there's something more that I can do besides just beating myself up over not matching the behavior of the others or what I perceived of them. Well, that is, the behavior is just, it is perceivable by others. That is the difference between the behavior and the emotion. Like, well, there's a lot more differences than that too. The behaviors are active actions. They are measurable. They are observable, whatever. Emotions, sometimes people get really, really good at masking. And it's not just autistic people. It can be anyone and everyone. And also those customer service representatives with a plastered on smile who absolutely hate their life but are smiling today because it's their job to do so. I feel for them. I feel for everyone. Every single one of us who's felt alone or misunderstood, or lost hope that they would ever be able to find peace or happiness for themselves in their lives. And so in that moment, all of that is flooding through, and I realize, hey, it will take the course it needs to, and to trust that process. And so in that, I was able to alleviate some of the anxiety that was kind of coming because of this. And the question of that transitional phase, it can make sense considering the way that our bodies are still learning to actually dip into deeper relaxation is foreign to me. I've lived most of my life in a chronically escalated state of being. And for most people, it was just too much, and they didn't know how to respond or deal with that. But I think that a lot of times, too, the reason we embody into the ego and are more forceful or pushy with our ideas, rather than receptive and responsive to the information that comes, I believe that this actually may come from wounds deep in our past, that are telling us you're not good enough. If you feel like you have something to prove, ask yourself why. Because if for some reason you were told or taught to believe that your ideas didn't matter, that hurts. That really hurts. The same way the emotions that are suppressed snap back even more intensely, we do this too. And if we're noticing this about ourselves, it can help to understand, and making space for this, even if I am this day or that day, any given day, things change. Make space for the fluctuations. Creating expectations of it to ever be a certain way is going to create a lot of rigidity and disappointment and a lot of incongruence that's going to lead to a lot more suffering and a lot more distraction from your growth. Or, well, it is the growth that needs to happen, actually. I've just realized how much it was distracting me. I realized how often I was spinning in my own circles and not actually getting much what I thought was progress. Why was I, but the thing is, also, those spinning circles needed to happen for me to get to the point where I could understand why that was happening. I mean, through everything, it'll begin to make sense, but it is so crucial that we trust ourselves and trust the greater forces at bay, and find a way to make it make sense. And whether it's through the lens of yoga, or through the lens of art, or through the lens of psychology, or through the lens of maths, or through the lens of different sciences, or medical, astronomical, astrological, biological, botanical, whatever. There's no wrong answer with how it works for you, because we are each our very own unique people. The biggest thing is all people, every single one of us, deserve the love that we are capable of, the capable love that we're capable to give and receive, and it's within every single one of us. And for years and years, I was really stuck in a place where I did not believe I was capable to love. And I did not believe I was capable to give or receive love. And that was a really difficult framework to be working with. But I've learned a lot more since then, thankfully. And it has just definitely opened my eyes and my heart and mind and my soul and the entirety of my being and what I am capable of because of this. And so I'm choosing to share this with you because a lifetime spent suffering, I would wish this upon no one. And the truth is that the answers to the questions that we're asking ourselves this is the hard stuff. What would be easier would be to just pretend. It would be easier to just go through the motions and distract yourself and do drugs and alcohol to get out of yourself and escape the pain. The truth is, life does not have to be constant pain. Life does not have to be just this endless loop of suffering. There are ways to hack the system. There are ways to rewrite the script, rewrite the narratives that we're force feeding ourselves on repeat because that's just the way it is. It's not the way it is. It's the way you believe it has to be. But if we can start to realize that there may be other options for ways of looking at things or ways of thinking about what's happening with ourselves, it begins there, okay? What I've noticed too is it carries out into other aspects of life. And honestly, it's like a ripple that just extends to affect everything. And if I never get rich or, whatever, that was never like my focus. It has not necessarily been on wealth or fame or this or that. These last 2 years have been tremendously focused on self-improvement, on healing, on figuring out the things that I've avoided my whole life. Some people will go their whole lives just avoiding the entire thing. And when I see people like that, and it breaks my heart, it's so sad because I know what it's like, but it's so deeply nested and embedded down in there that what they live for, what they get up and do this for every single day, even if they don't love themselves enough to acknowledge the stuff, it's like they have a sense of honor or a sense of purpose still. Otherwise, they would not be here. And sometimes that sense of purpose is the only thing keeping them. But I respect that still. I cannot force someone to do anything. It's not my place to try to persuade anyone or try to change their mind. But one of the beautiful things that I believe is that regardless of what lens you're looking through, there's a connection. And that's where I go with this, is in understanding more of other people's perspectives. I've found that There's such a beautiful wealth of knowledge and wisdom waiting for all of us. All we got to do is start to open up, hit into more vulnerable spaces. Don't try to rush the process. Don't try to look away or do what somebody else did, because that's beside the point. The point is when we can notice within ourselves the truth, when we can honor it, we are healing, we are strengthening, we are becoming more accepting and less resistant to ourselves, to the world. Things start to unfold more naturally for us, and we don't have to pour our own energy into the effort of all of these in-between steps and reasoning and analysis and all of this. How much time and how consuming that can be, and how exhausting that can be without end. I've literally been in a 4-hour conversation that just nothing but questions and what if, a lot of what if situations. Philosophy is beautiful. Philosophy is a lens that I absolutely adore, but you're not going to step into philosophy the same way you're going to step into math. You're going to go in and find that philosophy is really a quest. It is encouraging of the continuing of the quest, of kind of fine-tuning and carving out the understanding of belief. And they use a lot of structured argument to counter certain thoughts or ideas, to challenge them, because ultimately the thought is, if you can't challenge it and if there's no way to disprove it, then it must be true. And questions on truth and, morality and ethical, whatever's and our existence and consciousness and everything. It's a beautiful way to engage in this life and think about it. I mean, we can do anything. That's a creative pursuit right there, just in thinking. Thinking itself is the medium. But there's a lot more to life than just constantly questioning. It's time to start really infusing the answers and the wisdom that we've gathered with ourselves, and really put that wisdom to good use in practice. And in doing so, you're becoming the change that you are hoping to see in the world around you. Because if you were that one left out feeling different or feeling like you couldn't be accepted or be yourself, everything that we've had to do to survive in this life. I mean, yep, I'll have to do more videos to keep on elaborating into some of these, but despite the fact that this is an endless journey, until it's over, we're still here. So we wake up another day and we live our life another way, better than yesterday. Just keep on keeping on, because little bits at a time, inevitably we grow. We will learn from every single thing. The potential is there. If we're totally numb in our awareness and closed, if we're high, we're dulling our own connection to truth. It might be fun for some. It might be an addiction. It might be horrendous. Who knows what those experiences are like. But when we are really considering the substance as the answer, the problem with that is that it's not allowing you yourself to have the full access to you yourself, and therefore and also the perceptions of things will be distorted through those effects. And I'm not trying to judge anybody, because part of learning also is this exploration. You have to find out what works and what doesn't work, and the only way you do that is by doing it and seeing for yourself. I think everybody should do drugs sometimes, like we have to know, but also don't do drugs, because there's a lot of risk associated with that. Actually, maybe you should do drugs, like if a doctor prescribes, or I don't know. Listen, I'm not going to encourage any illegal, this is getting a little weird and out there, but basically what I'm trying to say is there, even though It is something that has been devastating and taken lives and devastated families and communities, depending on the drugs, depending on what it is. But nonetheless, I can't group this all into some generalized statement, this or that. I am not a supporter of absolutes or rigidity in that kind of thinking, which is exactly the point. Before you might be one to judge someone for using substances, you have to know there's so much more to this. And the shame itself is enough to cause that much more pain that just perpetuates the problems that lead to trying to solve the problems and maybe difficulty in that areas. And I think that, things lead on to other things. And listen, we're all doing the best we can. So if that's you, I'm just going to send you some love, because I get it. Like, I would never criticize anyone for where they're at. As long as they wake up again tomorrow and just keep trying and just understand it might seem impossible, but what else could it be? What else could there be? And maybe if we're not seeing much of an option for that, we should change the scenery, change the information and the input, change the people, change the activities, give ourselves new sensations, give ourselves new opportunities to learn, to grow. And yeah, I'm excited to see what happens. I'm really looking forward to this. My training as a yoga instructor has only just begun. But my training as a healer has been life, and it's been ongoing forever. And I want to continue to share more on the personal types of experiences that I've had and the meaning that I've gathered from them. But I do want to also just put it out there that there's no way I could have all the answers for anyone. This is my perspective. It is my best attempt to try to help others, because all of that struggling was not for nothing. What I've been through in my life has led me to this point, and there was an important reason for all of it, and I truly believe that. Otherwise, I would not be here today. So, and just a little added special thanks for all of the people in my life who did not conclude on me prematurely. And for those who did, I understand when you had to leave, and I understand when you had to be done with the relationship with me for whatever reason, because I wouldn't want you to suffer. You are honoring your needs just as I'm encouraging everyone. The problems in those situations were that I did not know how to recognize my needs or understand how to meet those needs. And I think mistakenly giving that responsibility to someone else was a surefire way to totally kill those relationships. I still believe that there's value even in the other aspect, like all of it. But for a long time, I think I sat with a lot of pain around some of these things, and it's just at this point I can understand, and it does make sense. And I can understand why you did what you did. And looking back, I can understand why I did what I did. And the thing is, if anyone were to just stand by and allow me to do some of the things that I was doing, the reasons why it went the way it did, it's like those were the natural consequences of some harm that I did not recognize that I was dishing out everywhere because of my own pain. And I was the bully, and I was inconsiderate of others because I couldn't even connect with myself. And I think a lot of times that's really what it comes down to for anyone out there causing harm for people. So there's more to come on this, because I think that this could potentially have a role to play in the progression of our society and our understanding as a whole of global knowledge and a collective conscious, or even maybe just my small community here, or even bringing it back just, you know, maybe it's for me too. That life is worth it, all lives. And there's something important here that we need to recognize. Allow yourself time to transition. Give yourself grace, give yourself love. And if you're having trouble getting out of Shavasana, for gosh sake, just take a deep breath. It's going to be okay. You know? Alrighty. Well, anyways, take care. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm an open book. So, yeah. It's quite the invitation. It's kind of a challenge too. I'm curious to see what anyone might have to say about any of this. So, all right, take care. Namaste. Love you. Love yourself. Love the world, the universe, the energy's here for you. So dip in anytime you like. Bye.